I did not like Boop the musical. That being said, at intermission, while I was pondering my own thoughts, I overheard the person behind me telling her friends how much she was having a fantastic time. I did not want to yuck anyone's yum, so I broke my review down into some pros and some cons. To start with the pros, this is a big, flashy spectacle of a show. And in a large part, that is due to director and choreographer Jerry Mitchell, which, as you all know, one of my favorite shows is Legally Blonde, which he directed and choreographed. And he does an exceptional job here as well. It's fun and it's joyful. And I feel like a lot of people are going to really enjoy the choreography and the dancing from the ensemble. The music by David Foster is also not bad. There are some songs here that I really enjoy, especially because of the orchestrations by Doug Besterman. My favorite song, Where I Want to Be, I've been listening to it on repeat. I think it is that fabulous. The vocal performances are what I think elevate the songs. Some of you may know Angelica Hale from America's Got Talent. I know her from Cheryl Porter's Instagram, where they do those vocal exercises. She has a phenomenal voice and does a great job. Everyone who is cast in this show is just singing their heart out on stage, and they sound phenomenal. I do wish that I could make out some of the lyrics. We'll talk about that a little bit from a view from my seat, but overall, the tone of voice, everything, gorgeous. Jasmine Amy Rogers is my next pro for this production. What a revelation. She is a phenomenal leading lady and is so magnetic on stage. I just wish that there was more to this role for her to sink her teeth into. But it's really impressive how she is able to elevate what on paper doesn't have a lot of meat to it. But she does a phenomenal job leading this company. And that's an exceptional thing because this is her Broadway debut. And she just really knocks it out of the park. She owns that stage, and I really hope that she gets more work off of this role. She has to. The lighting design by Philip S. Rosenberg and the costumes by Greg Barnes are another highlight. I like the way that the show plays with color. There are two worlds in this show. There is the cartoon world that Betty Boop is from, and then there's also the real world where we spend time in New York City. One is black and white, the other is a world of color, and I think that was done really well. It's very sugary. I do feel like there may be some critics who may touch on how overstimulating it can be. I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun and very colorful and very bright. I was very impressed how they did the change from black and white to color, that I was thinking of that film Pleasantville, and I said, Jerry Mitchell, why don't you go ahead and option Pleasantville as your next production? I think that you would do a really good job with that. So if anything, there's something. I was walking away thinking like, hey, this would be another great show. But that's pretty much it where it comes to the pros of this production. And honestly, if there was something here that I touched on where you're like, that's enough for me, that is exactly what I want to see from a Broadway show. Lots of spectacular dancing and singing, high energy music numbers, great vocals, fun lighting. If that's it for you, that's great. I think you are going to have a very fun time. However, where the show falls flat for me is in its paper-thin story. When you find out what the show is about, Betty Boop going to the real world, there isn't much left to surprise you in terms of what happens on her journey. I was missing some fun when it came to telling the story. You know, like, all right, we have the cartoon world and the real world. What happens when that doorway gets opened up? Do the worlds start to collide? What does that look like on a Broadway stage? I feel like something like that would have heightened the stakes a little bit. And that's just an example. Obviously, they can do whatever they want. But I just felt like they didn't really do much with what they were given, which was very unfortunate. And the story, it feels like that the beats are in the wrong places. The entirety of Act 1 feels like it would be the first 30 minutes of a different show. And also, I had trouble following the main character's arc. Betty Boop's arc in this show is very unclear. Her main want at the start is to become a nobody. She doesn't fully get that, or at least I feel like when a character outlines what they want, they have to get it and realize that that's not actually what they wanted, and then they fight for whatever that is, or they get it, lose it, and then have to fight to get it back. If that's what she really wanted, have her face the reality of what that actually is like to wake up every day and not be a massive celebrity, not be a massive star. You know, how would that feel? At this point, the premise of the show just feels very unoriginal. It's a fictional character finds themselves in a real world. We've seen this done so many times at this point, and I don't think that it helps that Barbie came out recently, and that is essentially what Boop the Musical is. But whereas Barbie has a lot of really interesting commentary, and in my opinion has more of a through line, Boop the Musical is a little muddier. There really isn't a central theme that I can narrow in on and say that is what Boop the Musical is about. It's unfortunate because I do think that Barbie and Boop were sort of being worked on around the similar times. I think Barbie just did it first and did it better in terms of what they're trying to achieve here. The other characters involved in Boop's story are largely forgettable. I could not remember a single character's name that wasn't Betty Boop, and the conflicts are so one-dimensional. Everything just kind of feels thrown at the story, and it's not really coming together for Betty Boop's narrative. It did not work. I think Fleischer Studios, when they based this character off of Baby Esther, from my research, it doesn't seem like they intended to make this like an all ages character. I think that Betty Boop was more so popular with adult viewers. Like it was almost like an adult animated. They should have made an adult animated series of Betty Boop like they did with Harley Quinn. I actually think that that's probably the better route to take with a character like this. So I do wonder, like, will younger audiences be interested in this type of show when they hear, oh, there's a Betty Boop musical? Will they ask their parents to go and see it? Will they form groups to go and see it? Like, I just don't know if that's what it is. And I kind of wish that the creative team, when they were thinking about the story of the show, I wish that they took into account what Betty Boop is today. You know that scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit where Betty Boop appears and she's a cocktail waitress and she's saying, oh, you know, things have really gone downhill for me since cartoons came out or cartoons in color came out. And I wonder if they should have had the character start at that place, not jaded, but I think it would be cool to see the character try to find her light again in 2025 in the world. I mean, this musical will just have you thinking that Betty Boop is the most popular, iconic person in the entire world based on how it writes her. And I don't know if audiences will sort of identify with those feelings towards her. But again, I listed my pros before, and for some people that'll be enough. And my cons here are just what I found to be my issues with Boop the Musical. Here is a view from my seat. I got one of those rush tickets. It was the $30 tickets for people under 30. You go up to the box office, you show your ID. You don't have a lot of leeway when it comes to where you sit. They basically say, all right, here's your seat, enjoy. And you're like, okay. I did feel a little bit far away, but the view was great. And especially this is such a choreography heavy show that actually being in the mezzanine, I thought was excellent for this. You know, you could see all the formations and things like that. It was fine. It was totally fine. The only thing that wasn't was I couldn't understand all of the lyrics. And I think that this was a sound design issue. I liked hearing the orchestrations from where I was sitting, but I do think that they overpowered the lyrics a little bit, or it just wasn't a very good mix. I really couldn't understand a lot of the lyrics unless they were repeated in the song. So should you see Boop before it closes? I think that this overall is another option for families that isn't Disney. So let's say you've seen all of the Disney shows that are currently playing on Broadway and you want to take your family to another show. I think that this is a good option to have in your mind. And if there's someone who says, I don't really care what we see, as long as it has high energy dance numbers, costume changes, colorful lighting. If that is what you're looking for in a show, then I think Boop is a really great option for that. However, if you were hoping that this musical would be able to build off of Betty Boop's lore a little bit more and tell a really interesting and fascinating story that's going to resonate with lots of audiences, I think it's a little too broad in terms of what it's trying to aim for to achieve that goal. Those are my thoughts on Boop the Musical, now playing at the Broadhurst Theater. I would love to read your thoughts in the comment section below. I would also really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to check out some of my other reviews and theater-related content on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to stay off your phones while at the theater.